Welcome to Season 2 of the Golden Horseshoe Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Koko Nunasawa. I'm a mortgage agent with Synergy Mortgage Group, and I'm someone who's spent years in various sides of the real estate transaction, previously as both a real estate agent as well as an investor. In this podcast, we share local market insights, future outlooks, and proven strategies all around different niches of the real estate market. And we also get an inside look into the journey of top real estate agents, how they build their businesses, the lessons they've learned along the way, and just real insight into how the world of real estate works from behind the scenes. I hope you enjoy. We have Terrance Hatton here. Terrance, you're a realtor with Coldwell Banker Advantage based out of Welland.
Yep.
For those sort of getting to know you for the first time, can we give them sort of a brief intro?
Sure. Yeah. I've been licensed with Coldwell Banker Advantage since the beginning, 15 years in now. So a little bit of experience, and I'm partnered with my wife, Julie Hatton, also licensed with Coldwell Banker Advantage. She's got more experience than I do. She's been in for about 20 years. So we've got some experience between the two of us, and we live in Welland, full-time agents with our golden retriever, Milo, at home. And, we do on the side, rec sports and hang out with friends and family and a lot of that stuff.
Beautiful. So for today, our topic is going to be specifically for the out-of-town buyer. So especially in the Niagara region, you mentioned we're seeing a decent amount of people move here from the GTA, from some of the more expensive cities closer to Toronto. We'll cover a couple of types of buyers. So there'll be sort of the buyer who's more looking for a starter home and maybe they can't afford to buy a home in Toronto. And they're willing to buy a home here because it's within their price range, as well as the second segment, which is we're seeing a lot more retirees move to the area. And then we'll talk about sort of the different areas where each of these buyers look at and sort of where the market is at for those type of homes. So I guess to start off with, if someone's considering moving to the Niagara region from out of town, what would be a good starting point for them to look at this? So they have this idea in their mind. They're maybe browsing realtor.ca, looking at listings. They see, there's affordable homes there. What do you think is like a practical tip for them to educate themselves a little bit better and to actually like get the ball rolling to be better prepared for something like this?
Yeah. So usually what we would do is just sort of assess the client's needs, basically, what they're looking for. We'll discuss budget, but we sort of cast a wide net. Niagara is a large region and there's a lot of different municipalities that might be better fits for different people based on what they're looking for.
True.
So based on their needs and their budget, typically what I'll do is introduce them to a variety of listings that might meet their criteria, but in different municipalities, right? So we sort of start with a wide net and then zero in. And we can visit, we could say go down to Fort Erie and then rule that out. It might be a little bit too far. Now we're getting a little bit closer. We like St. Catharines. Maybe it's a little too pricey, but Thorold is a good fit. Or North Welland also could be in, so we sort of zero in on exactly what they're looking for. But it's almost like a process of elimination because there are so many different opportunities in the region. We like to start on the outside and then work our way in, And
I guess this is a tough question because every buyer has sort of different criteria, right? It may be schools, it may be sort of a specific type of home that they need with a home office, that kind of thing. So, but is it a fair assessment to say if affordability is the goal, would it be the southern half of Niagara where more of the affordable homes are? Or
in general, that's an interesting question. It is in general. The southern area of our region is typically more affordable, or you could sort of stretch your dollar. But within each of these municipalities, it almost works the same way, where the southern end of each city is almost more affordable. I don't know if you've noticed that,
that's true.
You think of like North St. Catharines is typically much more expensive than the south end. Certainly it's true in Welland. Port Colborne might be a bit of an outlier because now you're getting onto the north shore of Lake Erie. But for the most part, almost all of the municipalities within the region also follow suit with that south to north.
Yeah.
So that's, that's usually the way that it goes naturally, I guess. But
here's something that I felt about. So I moved to Niagara when I was. This was in 2017. I used to actually. So I am this type of.
This is you. Yeah. All right. All right.
So I grew up in Toronto. My family moved to Mississauga, and then I sort of ventured out here on my own. And eventually, so for anyone watching, if it feels scary to leave your family behind and move to Niagara, you can always convince them to move as well.
Yes. Yeah. That happens a lot. Yeah. That happens a lot. Is that what happened to you?
So eventually my brother and his family and my sister all moved to St. Catharines as well.
Great.
So now they're a little bit closer. My parents are still in Mississauga. They're the last ones. They're retired now.
The holdouts.
So we'll see. They have 3 grandkids here. So like
that's how you get them. That's how you get them.
But yeah, the north-south thing is interesting because I did notice that in St. Catharines and especially even in Welland, right? There's a big disparity between the north and south in terms of prices, but also in terms of the type of neighborhood. You get into, it's hard to say it, but like you get a bit of a nicer neighborhood when you go to sort of the northern part of whether it's Welland, whether it's St. Catharines. But obviously that price point affects that, right? If you're limited in price point, obviously your choices become less.
Even within those areas, though, those like southern or more affordable neighborhoods, there is a lot of opportunity there as far as, especially with first-time buyers, you as a stepping stone, we'll find a good purchase and say, we're going to be here for 5 years. Like we don't need to worry too much about this. We'll focus on some external factors, like proximity to the 406 is a big one for Welland, like basically where we are, but we kind of want to protect those values. If we are using this as a stepping stone for a first-time buyer, we can stay here for 5 years as long as we can get to the 406. A lot of young people have been priced out of St. Catharines in the last 5-10 years, and they're just flowing right down the 406. So if we can sort of use this as an opportunity, maybe not exactly where you want to be, but let's make a 3-year, 4-year, 5-year plan. And then that'll get us into one of those desirable North End neighborhoods that you're trying to get into, the ones that you want to raise your kids in.
And I think that's probably a good piece of advice for anyone buying a starter home in general. And of course it applies whether it's the GTA buyer or the local buyer. It's the first home is not likely to be your last, right? So it doesn't have to be perfect. But like you said, a stepping stone, get your foot in the door, hopefully build some equity within that time period. And then it gives you a few more options on the next home, especially if, you're buying the first home with a minimum down payment or you're using some of these programs available to sort of help you with the down payment. But then when you make that upgrade, hopefully you now have a full 20% to put on the next home, right? Okay, perfect. Anything else that would be useful for sort of the out-of-town buyer to know if they're considering moving to the Niagara region? So again, still the first-time home buyer looking at starter homes.
Anything useful? Well, I guess it would just be, trying on these different places for size and really familiarizing yourself with not just the different cities, but different neighborhoods within the different cities, because there's so many different possibilities. It's very dynamic, So I would say just to sort of assess not just the properties itself, but to have somebody who you can really sort of speak to understand what's going on in the neighborhood. What is there new development coming up here? Are these good parks? Can my kids play here? That sort of thing. So familiarizing yourself with all of these different subsections as well as the house itself. Do I have enough bedrooms? Is the garage what I need? Basement, etc. So it's kind of like a twofold process, I guess. So I would just say that.
Yeah, I think you brought a good point because even in the space of new developments, I wanted to ask you this. So in Welland, there are, I'm noticing recently, I don't know much about this neighborhood, but off of Clare Avenue, just to the, not the south end, but sort of south of the north part, if that makes sense. Right?
You're talking just north of Woodlawn on the west side of Clare?
So on the west side of Clare, but way further south. So, so where Fitch Street meets Clare.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
There are some newer developments that I'm starting to see, like even new build townhomes sell or list between that 450 to 525. So this is like new construction, just built. Sometimes no one's even occupied it. And like whoever bought it is selling it. to me, that seems very desirable. If it's a like brand new construction, so if you're the type of person who wants new construction property, but obviously need to stay within a certain budget, right? What do you think of that neighborhood right now?
Well, it is a great neighborhood because that's sort of that, like, not North End, but it feels like that North End location that people are after. Once you get into towns, affordability really becomes a much, like, it's much better for you as far as affordability goes, because what you're sacrificing in, a yard, a side yard, a backyard, you're getting much more house. And if you do want modern features, if you are interested in walk-in closets and primary bath and that sort of thing, this is an opportunity for you to get that. We just have to sacrifice, what you would get in a typical detached family home, right? But that's a great location. And especially if you're a young first timer, if you've got kids, or if you're planning on starting a family, these are great neighborhoods for your kids to play with their friends and hang out.
Because I think even with new construction, there are some challenging neighborhoods as well. Like,
yes.
So I have a rental in Southwell on Sauer, just off of Louise, and those sort of. And I've seen some of these neighborhoods get built, primarily get bought up by investors. This was during sort of the more active times, right? You had a development around that area. I think yours is just across the street from my duplex, I think. And we've seen some of those neighborhoods really deteriorate in a way, like a new construction neighborhood where if every buyer is an investor, and if they're not careful about who they rent it out to, and then if all the homes on a street start doing it at the same time, right? What have you seen in that regard?
Well, what happens, I think, with those is the developers come in and they really want to obviously maximize. So you're seeing like small frontages, for example, right? So we have more houses on the street, and exactly what you said, you've got maybe like an out-of-town investor who's renting it out. So with that, you lose a pride of ownership. Okay. So fast forward a couple of years, you've got these modern construction, contemporary looking properties that were built 4 or 5 years ago. By this point, you've probably had 4 or 5 different tenants go through the property. So although they're newer homes, I call them like high mileage homes, where they have a lot of wear and tear on them, even though they feel newer, So a lot of turnover in an area like that with small frontages, like more density, So those couple of things combined will really sort of accelerate the wear and tear on a neighborhood. But oftentimes, especially like this is one of the things that we mentioned earlier, when you're coming in from out of town, if you don't necessarily, you can't really identify these things, especially, if you're looking at all these other.
Because if you drive by the street, you're going to see new construction homes.
And they look great. They look great from the road. They really do look good. And sometimes, you get in there and you can see, 9-foot ceilings and a walk-in, and those things can kind of like give you some tunnel vision. And sometimes you forget about the fact that it's like, hey, if we have a barbecue, our friends and family are going to be parking, 2 blocks away. Like there's things like that are easy to forget, when you're looking at, new construction like that.
Like I personally, I understand that it was built for investors in a way where they didn't make it as, they were focused on trying to make it detached when maybe semis would have been a better fit, or there are things that maybe they did for the investor. I personally have no problem with the property type that they built. It's more just when you have, and maybe some of the condos downtown in Toronto may face something similar, because when you build a building and you have like 100, 200 units that you rent out immediately, but I guess it depends on the tenant quality as well. Like the challenge that I noticed was like they rented to single family tenants who had very little, not even pride of ownership, but pride of where they lived. Right. And then we just saw like some of these homes, like structurally they may look fine, but it's like the gutters are ripped off and they didn't bother telling the landlord, and like they didn't bother putting curtains on their windows. They would put like other things to just block the glass, right? So it just changes the feel of a neighborhood.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's always the struggle as an investor, buyer, anybody investing in real estate. The quality of tenant is, like, in my opinion, the most paramount.
And to be fair, there's good tenants as well.
Absolutely.
Right. So like if you work with obviously a good real estate agent or a good even property manager to make sure that when you're leasing out a property, you attract a better tenant profile.
100%.
And I think for that, and we can finish soon on this topic just because it's a very niche topic, but I feel like they may have reached a little bit more than they should have to get a higher rent.
Yeah.
And I think when I've seen that happen in the past, when you go for that $100, $200 extra, all the best tenants are like, yeah, I don't want to overpay for a place. So you end up getting the people who get rejected everywhere. And now when you have a whole street doing that at the same time,
you amplify it by an entire section of neighborhood. And
now the good tenants don't want to move to that street. Because now when they go see it, they're like, are these the neighbors I want to live with? Right. So
one of the best tenants we ever had, just a quick side note, fantastic tenant, loved him so much. He had a young family. He just immigrated to Canada. He took care of the place. We said, you can stay here as long as you want. He said to me, he's like, Terrance, I want to buy a house. I want to be a homeowner. So we talked about it. We sat down. He stayed there. I think he was there for like 3 or 4 years. And then we helped him buy his first house. He saved up for a down payment, just like hardworking.
Awesome.
You know, that awesome immigrant story. And we were like super happy to help him find a house. And it's never going to get any better than that. You know, like that's the idea. But yeah, great tenants are great, you know. And then when you get them, you're lucky to have them. You want to take care of them, and they'll take care of you.
100%. All right, so let's shift gears slightly here. Before we do, just going back to the starter home buyer moving to Niagara.
Yeah.
What are some of the best opportunities that you see, just in terms of like homes that are of a decent quality in a decent neighborhood at a price point that is more affordable for that first-time home buyer, where say it's a couple, but they're working, say, maybe 50, 60 grand a piece. They're not making a crazy income, but as a household, you know, they're able to get into that, call it 4 to 550 price range. What are some of the more interesting opportunities you've seen in that price range? Sort of where in Niagara, and what property type have you seen?
I can't think of like a specific location or property type, but I have noticed with the adjustment in prices that we've seen recently that for the mid fives, you can find yourself a property that would have easily been, you know, high sixes or low sevens a couple of years ago. We sold a property recently that we priced, I think, at $719,900. The bank appraisal had just come back. It was $725,000. And we had a real hard time selling it, and we finally sold it for $550,000.
Oh, wow.
So that purchaser got a fantastic deal on a great property that was worth a lot more, probably unaffordable for that purchaser just a couple of years ago. So there are opportunities, although we're starting to see an uptick in the spring market. I'm sure you've seen it, you know, properties, some are selling, you know, 5, 10, 15 days, like what we would expect for the spring market. There are still some properties, days on the market have been up there. You know, they're a good opportunity to come in and get something that would have probably been unaffordable in 21, 22, 23 probably. And now this is your opportunity to get into, you know, something that checks more of your boxes. You know, you used to have to sacrifice a lot, and now you can get a lot more. So there are opportunities out there. You just sort of have to sift through them and really kind of look.
And not all listings are fairly priced either.
That's a very good point. Yeah. Whereas when the market was super hot, the listing price wasn't a fair reflection of the final sale price. But it was always the other way. And now we're seeing the same thing where it's not a reflection of the final sale price, but it could be anywhere. It could be quite a bit less. And then, you know, if you're pricing stuff aggressively, it's also it could be right at what you listed.
I saw a property near my daughter's school in Welland where it was listed at 700 for a week or two. It didn't get much action. They dropped it to like $599. And then within a week, they sold it for $650.
There you go.
So so there was demand, maybe not at 7, but clearly at $650. Right?
Perfect example of, you know, if you're just off by a little bit, you're kind of floating out in no man's land. And then when you get it right, you know, it'll adjust. But that's a perfect example of on both ends, the list price not reflecting the final sale price or the actual value. You know,
which makes life a little bit difficult. You know? If you're just looking at listings online, it's like, is it going to go over? Is it going to go under?
And that's why buyer agency is such a great value. That's why, you do have a good opportunity, especially coming into it. It's hard to do it if you're familiar with the area, never mind if you're going into a new area and trying to familiarize yourself with not just the market, but the area. But that's why buyer agency is so valuable,
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
You get somebody that you know and you can trust and move forward from there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think for this, especially for someone buying their first home and they're coming to Niagara out of affordability, the one unique thing we have in Niagara is we have one of our local credit unions offering a mortgage product where they will actually lend the buyer the down payment. So if they don't have the full down payment saved up, like this isn't available in Toronto.
Right. Yeah.
So for the person willing to come out to Niagara, there are some options here where you don't even necessarily need the full down payment as long as you get qualified.
Yes.
Right. So now the big part with that is if you have a decent job in Toronto, you need to be able to work remotely to make this move work, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe go to the office 1 or 2 days a week. And
a lot of offices are still doing a hybrid system following COVID. If you can come in 2 or 3 days a week and then work from home, we see a lot of people doing that. But it is a huge opportunity to take advantage of that program because, for years we just heard from people saying, this younger generation, we're just not going to be able to afford to buy a house. It's just, it's gone too far and it's never going to happen. And they just kind of gave up on it. And now we're seeing an adjustment in prices, and a program like this is a perfect opportunity.
And overall interest rates are not bad. Like, yes, it's higher than the lows of COVID, but historically, like
what is prime at right now?
Prime is at 4.45 on a variable. You can get a discount off of it. So, high 3s, low 4s in terms of an interest rate, like that, along with lower prices, like I think it's now probably more affordable now than even when COVID started.
Right. Yeah.
And especially in the Niagara region, before COVID, prices were really not that high. It just spiked during
It really
COVID,
did.
right?
Yeah. I was surprised.
So, all right. I think a lot to chew on there for the starter home buyer. Let's go to retirees or someone making more of a lateral move where, say, they've gone up the property ladder in Toronto, Oakville, Mississauga. They've owned a starter home. They bought a detached home and they've built some decent equity over the years. And now they're looking to, whether it's move out of the city, right? Come here for a bit more of a peaceful retirement, if that makes sense. Or they're looking to sort of cash in on their home value, right? Where, say, they own a home that's worth 1.5, 2 million, and they're looking for sort of a nicer home in Niagara, but something meaningfully less so that they can pocket the difference.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've had a lot of clients over the years that are exactly what you just described. And it used to be Niagara was like a secret, and it was kind of like twice the house, half the price. Yes. So when somebody would come from the GTA, their jaws would sort of hit the floor. We still have that, but the secret's out. So the values are a little bit higher than they were before, but relative to the GTA, just so much more affordable. So a lot of clients in that situation, retirees, looking for like a slower pace, we could essentially, we can find you a house that's a lateral move or even a little bit nicer than what you've got in the city. And then you've got a lot of equity that goes directly into the bank, from the value of the house into the bank. And now you can do Europe. You can go to Florida all winter. It really sort of opens up a lot of different options for you to enjoy your life and not have a sacrifice the quality of living, right? So, and oftentimes it's even better. We'll find you like a nicer home. And we do have a lot of communities in Niagara that have exactly that, So although you're not in the GTA anymore, we still have great wineries and restaurants and places to go to. You're not in the middle of nowhere sacrificing, your lifestyle to come down here. So there's a lot of good opportunities for that, especially in Niagara, as you go down the, if you were to go from Niagara on the Lake and follow the river all the way down to Fort Erie, there's a lot of good opportunity in those areas. And the proximity to the airport in Buffalo is something that I think a lot of people forget, because if you're planning on traveling a lot in your retirement years, getting to the airport in Buffalo from Fort Erie or even Niagara on the Lake is so much easier than driving into Peterson.
Especially if they're going to Florida or Arizona, it's like there's probably internal flights within the U.S. that's even security is way easier. You just cross the border and you just take an internal flight, essentially, right?
Yeah, and that's something that I think a lot of people forget when they're sort of looking at it through that lens.
That's a really good point. I will say the one thing, if you are not a fan of like harsh winters, Niagara probably has one of the mildest winters in Ontario.
Yeah, it's strange that we do, but yeah, we have that from the lakes. It actually helps, you know.
Yeah, I noticed this because even my family still lives in Mississauga, and they would tell me when they still have snow on the ground and it's fully melted here.
Yeah.
Or some days I'd be driving to visit them. And it's like, there's no snow in Niagara. And then as I get closer to Toronto, it's like, oh, there's still snow.
It's weird how that works, eh? Yeah. But it does go the other way too. When you're on like the north shore of Lake Erie, it could be the opposite where
a few times a year when we really get like when Buffalo really gets hit hard, we do get the spillover effect, right?
Well, it's been so mild the last couple of winters, you know, even when we do get those storms, they just kind of like a couple days later, it'll be 8 degrees and it'll just start to melt off. You know, winter isn't what it used to be for sure around here.
Yeah. Last winter, though, I will say beat me up a little bit. At the end, I was like, okay, this has been a few snowstorms in a row. But, you know, we still got it better than everywhere else pretty much. Right?
Absolutely.
I was chatting with a friend in like Kitchener and he was like, yeah, I have like 2 feet of snow on my driveway. I was like, we got like half a foot, but it's still... it still felt like quite a bit. My hack for that, so anyone, if you're a retiree, I'm sure some of these retirement neighborhoods, they have better solutions. My solution was a kid down the street from my home.
Yeah.
Like a high school kid. He knocked on my door, asked if he could shovel the driveway. And I'm like, yes, and give me your number. And I'm going to text you every other time that.
I love that. There are so many kids in our neighborhood that are just willing. They're so like industrious. They're just willing. They're like business oriented. They're willing to help. I always have stands on the street. I love that sort of stuff. Yeah, let them go. Anytime it snows, come back.
Exactly.
100%.
The one interesting thing you mentioned for retirees is like there are these, obviously the area close to the Niagara River. I've noticed there are these almost like communities that are built up where it's not a retirement community per se, but it's neighborhoods where the homes that were built are more geared towards retirees, and they essentially become retiree communities because almost all the owners in those neighborhoods are retired.
Well, they're designed, I think they're developed with a target audience.
Yes.
Right. And that's who's gravitating towards them. So you're absolutely right. It's not a retirement community, but it might as well be.
Yeah.
Right.
Can you talk us through like the style of these homes? What's unique about them that really attracts the retirees?
Okay. So usually we're looking at bungalows, right? Because we want to avoid the stairs. And I think oftentimes what we naturally end up gravitating towards is like a town.
Okay.
Because there's less maintenance going on, right? So, you know, at that point in your life, you know, you don't want to be, you know, dealing with a giant lawn in the back. You know, you want to be able to, you know, leave at the drop of the hat if you want to, go down south in the winter, that sort of thing. So less maintenance. And as we do that, we also gain, again, we can stretch our dollar and get more house out of our, you know, nest egg, so to speak, or the equity that you're taking so that you can get more house in a town, and then you've got more in the bank to do whatever it is you want to do, whatever you want to do in your golden years.
And I've seen where they really promote like the one level living, right?
Yeah.
So you'll have like 2 bedrooms on the main floor, like laundry on the main floor, right?
Yep.
And yeah, they usually have a basement. Sometimes it's finished, sometimes it's not. But for the most part, like the key area is just the main floor.
Exactly. Yep. We just closed on one last week in a wonderful neighborhood here in Welland, right on the 406, quiet community, homeowners association, single floor. Everything you need is on the main floor. If you want to go downstairs, great. That's a bonus. You have the option, but you don't even need to go down there if you don't want to. Everything you need is on the main floor. And it's just, it's really appealing for a lot of people, especially like in this demographic that we're talking about.
Out of curiosity, like what purchase price was that in Welland?
This one that I'm talking about now, this is high sevens, Hunter's Point. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is still
look at a home
quite a bit off the peak. Those used to go like, I want to say north of $1 million even, right? During the peak. So.
Yeah. If you go far back enough, you'll see very similar homes over the 1 million mark or just under.
Wow.
Yep. A lot of value.
Yeah.
A lot of value right now.
And from a safety perspective as well, especially if you are going down south for extended periods of time, the townhouse is kind of nice where it's like there's a whole bunch of neighbors you'll probably get to know. All of them are probably in a similar spot.
Yep.
Where it's a bit different than if you were, say, on a busier street, or if you were just like if you owned a detached home and you didn't have as many neighbors
Exactly.
you could count on, so to speak.
And that's like sort of getting back to the value of buyer representation that we were talking about. You know, when we've had clients over the years and they'd say, hey, Terrance, what about this one? They send me a listing. And from the outside looking in, it does seem like it matches what they're looking for. And yet they have to say, no, this isn't what we're after. This is a different, this is a whole different neighborhood. You know, this isn't for you. We're going to skip this one altogether. You really can't tell a lot of those intangibles from like looking at a listing online.
Yes.
You know, sometimes you know, you have to, and when you're coming from Toronto, you don't want to find out when you get there and go, oh, this isn't where I want to be, because, you know, you thought it was going to take you an hour to get here, but it took you 2.5, right? That's usually the thing. So we want to kind of focus on quality over quantity, and sort of, like I said, hone in on exactly what we're looking for. So that process works for not just like the first timers, but retired, like anybody coming to the area, sort of.
Well, I think, like, I'll share my own experience. Now, thankfully, I rented initially when I moved to Niagara. A friend of mine owned a property in St. Catharines.
Okay.
And maybe the alarm bells should have rung when he said he was keeping it vacant instead of renting it out, because renting it out was too much trouble. It was a detached home, and he's like, you can rent it for $1,000 a month, a 3-bedroom detached home. Like, that sounds like an incredible deal. I was living in
good to be true.
Mississauga there. So it turns out this is a home on Center Street in downtown St. Catharines, just off of Geneva Church, that area.
Queenston-ish.
Exactly. So I move in there. I was single at the time, so I didn't care about safety. I didn't care about, maybe I should have, but I move in there. My home's broken into twice.
Come on.
Right, while I'm living there. Both like Christmas holidays. Like, I leave for a couple of days, I come back, the door's open.
Oh boy.
And yeah, like Niagara, I guess every city has this, but I will say the one thing about the downtown areas of, like, whether it's St. Catharines, even Welland a little bit, definitely Niagara Falls,
every
right?
city.
There are streets that you, just because the purchase price is low, doesn't mean that's the best place to get
exactly. And it really depends on the buyer. And interesting that you said that. So right around the corner from the place that you rented when you first moved down, we had a listing around the corner right off of Queenston, and it was a nicely renovated property. You know, the property itself was great. And we did open house, and I think we got a call. So a young woman, first-time buyer, said, Terrance, I really like this place. I'm thinking I want to make an offer. And, you know, we had to say, you know, we really had to discuss the neighborhood, because I didn't like it for her at all. And at that point, it wasn't like we had a representation, you know, there was no implied agency. It was just sort of right at the beginning. And I had to explain to her the difference between, you know, this and other areas and other sections. So I think we ended up finding her something else. And we found the perfect buyer for our seller client, a young guy. He knew the area, you know, it was close for him to get to work, that sort of thing. It was a better fit for him than it was for her, but, you know, she didn't know, right? And sometimes you know, you got to explain this sort of stuff.
You see the sticker price, right? You're like, $399 or whatever the price
jumps off the page, right? Because you're looking at all these other ones, and now this one is obviously much better, you know, and you really want to go for it. And sometimes, you know, you forget to look at why, maybe, right? Because you get so excited, especially being a first-time purchaser, you do really get excited, you know, and you can see yourself in this place, and you really sort of get tunnel vision. Like, I've done it personally in the past, where, you know, you're focused on something and you just want it so bad that you're almost willing to ignore some of the things that you shouldn't be ignoring, you know?
Well, I'll share this perspective. So before I even moved to Niagara, I was living in Toronto, and with my family, we bought several rental properties in the cities outside of Toronto. So up in Barrie, up in Cambridge.
Okay. Yeah.
And I remember going with my realtor to see these properties. And my perspective was a person who had only rented in Toronto, right? In apartments, right? These 20-story buildings, you get like a 2-bedroom apartment, everything's old, everything's run down, right? So I go into these neighborhoods. I'm like, this is a nice neighborhood. This home looks like it's a house, right? Doesn't matter about the finishes, right? This is a house. You have a backyard, you have like a driveway, like, and we can afford it, right? So like, my instinct was like every home was a yes.
Mhm.
And the realtor we worked at the time, she had to sort of rein us in. It's like, hey, wait a second.
Yeah.
Like, even though this looks great from your vantage point, we may be able to find you something better.
Yeah. And that's
Right?
the telltale sign of I think, of a great agent is
Mm.
that, there's lots of opportunities for agents to do what's best for them, but
Yeah.
when they're doing what's best for their clients,
Yeah.
that's how you know you've got a good fit.
And especially because if you are someone like me who is living in Toronto and moving to Niagara, like if your perspective is only of having lived in Toronto, maybe renting apartments, seeing the detached homes as you're walking down the street to the bus stop and knowing you'll never afford
Yeah.
one of those.
Yep.
And then you come to an area where you're seeing detached homes
Yeah.
and you're told you can afford it.
Mhm.
Like your instinct may be like, I want to just
I'll take it.
rush this.
I'll take
right?
it. Yeah.
And again, like it's definitely a smart move to be able to buy a freehold property or to buy a property that you get a little bit more bang for your buck here. But even with that, you can still make a better decision as you're going.
Of course.
Down.
Yeah. Yeah. Within the, if you've got inventory to choose from,
Yeah.
you want to make sure you get the best fit for sure. It is tough though to not get excited when you didn't think it was possible at all. And then, you come in and you're like,
100%.
wow, this is incredible. Yeah.
100%. I still remember that, man. Like it's, yeah, I remember there was like I forget what, this was in Cambridge or where were we looking at the time? We were going all over buying sort of rental properties. And I remember this home, it had like a shag carpet that was like the thick green carpet.
Oh,
and,
yeah. Yeah.
Everything was dated in the
Yeah.
home, but we were like, yeah, this looks like a decent house.
Awesome.
Like, I'd live
Yeah.
here. Like,
Is that how you got into real estate? Like at the time, were you a mortgage broker then?
no. So I was working at RBC back then.
Okay.
So essentially, I convinced my brother, who was older than me, and our parents, like none of us own any real estate at this time. We're renting and we're just sort of working. It's like, let's pool our resources and try to buy something. And if we can buy it within the GTA, let's look outside the GTA. So we first looked in Barrie. We bought a townhouse up there. And thankfully, we started a bit earlier. So this was in 2013-ish. So believe it or not, we bought a townhouse up in Barrie for like $250,000, right? Semi-detached in Cambridge for like, I think 260 or something, right? So it really helped our family sort of get our foot in the door in real estate. Eventually, my parents bought like a condo in Mississauga, but like I think they didn't think that would be possible if we didn't sort of first explore the areas outside of the GTA. So, and if anything, it's become much harder to buy a house in Toronto in the GTA now.
Yeah.
Because even back then, I remember I had a boss who was buying like a bungalow in like Toronto core for something like $1 million, and he was going to put like, or maybe it was like 850 or 900 grand. And he was going to put about like 100 grand into it. And I was like, but I just bought a townhouse for like 250 grand. Right? It's like a quarter of the price.
That's right. Yeah.
You're paying. But like now that bungalow is probably like 1.5 or maybe even more. Right. So things have become even harder to sort of get your first foot in the door.
It is. Right? And it's like year over year over year. And we used to say, until this recent like sort of pricing correction that we're noticing now, especially with first timers, I would always say, listen, you're not going to be able to save up, probably not going to be able to save up as much as the house that you're looking at right now will be worth in a year from now. We're seeing like 5, 10, 15% increases year over year. And on a $400,000 house, it's like, even if you're living at home with mom and dad, you've got a good job and you're saving up, like the prices were like running away so fast that it was like, do your best now to hurry up and get your foot in the door. And we always would say it's more important for you to get your foot in the door with any real estate and then sort of use that as a stepping stone like we were talking about before, because if we're waiting to save up money, it's getting further away. You're really not getting closer. Even though you're watching your bank account grow, prices were just running away so quickly.
Yeah.
But now you've got a really good opportunity. It's almost the opposite. But it feels like we're sort of like leveling off now, where a lot of sellers have come to realize, I'm not going to get a 2022 price for my house. And they're willing to sort of adjust. And it's kind of like, you got to feel it out as you go down in price. But I think now buyers are starting to realize that, we can get a great value in a lot of these properties. And it's starting to kind of like balance out. I don't know. Have you noticed that in prices?
Yeah. So I mean, I think even on the street I live in, so this is just off of Woodlawn, right, in sort of North Welland. There was a semi on my street, almost identical to our home, that just sold for about 425.
Okay.
And on that same street in the past year, there have been some sales. Maybe the home needed a bit more work, who knows? But like that have gone like in the 390 to like 360 range. I think one property sold. So it feels like we're not getting as deep of a discount.
Yeah.
I'll bring this up. I was listening to a podcast where they were talking about the real estate market in the 90s relative to now. And the interesting thing about now compared to the 90s was real estate transactions stopped for about a year and a half, and then they just resumed, even though prices were on their way down. But the last couple of years have been interesting because prices have been coming down, but also like transactions have really slowed down for multiple years in a row. And the theory that they brought up was that back then, their affordability was still an option. So even though prices rose to this peak, flatlined, started dropping, as soon as prices came low enough, the buyer who could afford to buy sort of stepped in.
Yeah.
So that created a market where if you wanted to get out, you had to give a bit of a discount, but you could get out.
Yeah.
I don't know if, and they were saying this, they don't think that really exists in the GTA because like for house prices to reach affordability is like a drastic reduction, right? Many home purchases in the GTA were done from like someone having enough equity from their previous home, rolling it over, large family gifts, right? All of that. That has shrunk quite a bit, right? Because if you're now selling at a lower price, how much really can you move into the next home? Niagara is interesting though, where our starter home market is in that sweet spot where like if you have a couple working normal jobs, not anything super fancy, but like making 50, 60 grand a piece, that gets you in the door up to that 400,000 to 500,000 range, right? And that is kind of our starter market where like it's hard for me to imagine where if a house is at 4, because there's a lot now in the 4 to 450 range, right? For that to go down to like 3 to 350 would be surprising to me.
Yeah.
Because like there's a lot of people who want to own a home that are taking advantage of it now. And like the lower it goes, the more of them that can get into the market. At some point, the supply demand sort of evens out, right?
Yeah, I think that there's enough demand there where I don't know that it's going to dip much farther than that, especially in the entry level.
Yeah.
It does still take, usually 2 incomes to get that. But I think it's something nice and move-in ready for 425, 450. I can't imagine it going any lower than that, really, just based on the amount of demand, and even though the market has slowed over the last 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, whatever, there's still a demand. You're still seeing everywhere you go, developers are still getting ready and building new construction homes. Like it really does feel like it's just an affordability and the sellers getting used to the new selling prices and buyers sort of filling those gaps as they come in because there is still a demand for housing. We still need a lot of housing and people are still moving around. It's really just an affordability issue.
I think I'll say this and then we'll sort of go to your story as well. It is interesting to watch the starter home market because I feel like that is the more active part of the Niagara real estate market right now. And at the same time, I'm noticing with our rentals as well as with sort of just the investors I know when I talk to them about like, what's your experience right now? Even the property managers we work with, like how easy is it to lease out a property right now? That I feel like the top end of the rental market is starting to buy right now.
Yeah.
So it's putting pressure downward on rents to a certain degree at the top of the market, like a single family home or a upper level of a nice duplex, right? Where before we were able to get like 2,200, 2,500 in rent, that has kind of cooled down to say like a 1,900 or a 1,950, right? Like it's that extra rent we were able to get because of the demand has started to level off.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
And the quality of the applicants for rental is starting to be a lot less than it was. We still end up finding decent tenants at the end of the day, but it's just before we wouldn't have to wait much. We'd have like multiple people applying. Versus now it's like, it seems like that pool is shrinking. And
I find that, and I don't know if you've noticed this over the years, you've had a lot of these properties, but is it a quality tenant is more attainable like in a larger municipality than in a small city? Like you get up into like
probably like St. Catharines generally, what if I recall, like it's generally you find a tenant a little bit faster. The other interesting thing that we saw is Welland was very pro development, where it was easy to get a building permit to take a home, make it into a duplex. There was this rush of investors who recognized that, and they were like, okay, I want to work with a city that wants to work with me, right? So then what almost happened is we saw an influx in rental units being created out of, bungalows being turned into duplex, that kind of thing, to the point that it was easing some of the housing shortage in other cities. Because we'd see tenants apply moving from St. Catharines, moving from Niagara, because they could still work wherever they worked and just drive from Welland.
Well, that's the beautiful thing about the Niagara region, is that everything is, 20 minutes away at the farthest,
Yeah, 100%. But I think just the flip side of that now is we're not seeing a whole lot of new investors doing these strategies. At least from what I'm seeing, it's happening, but on a much smaller scale. We are seeing some developers build purpose-built rentals. There's a couple in North Welland that I've been watching, but the challenge is that we have a lot of supply of rental units, which as a city, from a overall humanity perspective, is great. If you're a landlord, though, owning properties in Welland right now, like the last 1 or 2 vacancies I've had in my duplexes, I think I've had to reduce my rent something like $100 from what the last tenant was paying. Now, generally, when that has happened, it was sort of a rent that I had set the year and a half prior. That was a peak rent. So I increased it from the year prior. But then when it refilled, if the tenant left, it had come down back to like where it was, say, a year and a half ago. So it's nothing drastic, but it is definitely softening.
No, that definitely makes sense, especially with the top end, like you mentioned.
If they are moving into the home ownership category. So anyways, there's a lot of nuances to it. I think, for anyone moving to the GTA, definitely I'd recommend them to give you a call, just have a conversation, right? I think definitely if you're not from the area, it is insane what I often see where they have a relationship with an agent, say in Toronto, and they're like, I want to work with this agent and make them drive out here. Sometimes they don't even want to drive out here. But the worst part is like, you can't truly understand an area if you don't actually do transactions there. So like, I know some agents who don't live in Niagara, but that do a ton of transactions here. So like, that's okay, right? Once you're involved enough to know the neighborhoods, that's fine. But like, if you're working with someone who's like bread and butter is downtown Toronto, and you're telling them you want to buy a home in Welland, like, how will they know the difference between the neighborhoods?
Exactly. You want somebody like a local expert, and that's what we emphasize on our billboard campaign, the local expert, because that is important. You could be an expert, but a local expert is somebody that you really want to lean on to, to point out those differences that we mentioned earlier, when you're coming into a new area.
100%. So Terrance, let's dive into your journey a little bit in terms of your career, getting into real estate. So you mentioned you and your wife have an interesting start to real estate. So you mentioned she started before you. Can you talk us through like what was life like back then, and how did that start in real estate come for both of you?
So my wife was licensed long before me. Her parents retired. They sold their company, and I think her father was just sort of looking for something to do, like semi-retired, and he would golf with Bill Bestwood, who was the former broker of record and owner of Coldwell Banker Advantage. And Bill sort of said, get your real estate license, come work with us. And Tony was, selling real estate to his golf buddies and friends, nothing too serious, but he was, semi-retired, but his business grew, and he he needed help, and Julie got licensed shortly after, and they were sort of working together as a team.
Okay.
And Julie was taking care of the back end for him, and he was able to sort of do his thing. And then as he was getting closer to hanging his hat again and just, slowing down, I lost my job. And I was looking for something to do. I was working for my uncle at the time after, just sort of like figuring out, what are we really going to do here? And then it was just, we had already invested in real estate.
Okay.
Real estate was sort of the topic of conversation around the dinner table. So it was kind of a natural fit. So I got licensed, and then eventually Tony retired, and we sort of took over that format where Julie runs the back end of everything and keeps the trains running on time and sort of organizes everything. And then it allowed me to go out and meet new people and sort of grow the business. So it's been a really good fit for the two of us, and it just sort of grew naturally that way over the last 15 years like that.
Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a pretty cool. I will say, like, working with your spouse definitely comes with pros and cons.
Sure. Yeah.
I experienced that for a couple of years, and
Yeah.
it's you definitely communicate way more than I would say most couples do.
100%.
Right? Because you just
100%.
you know, like, intimately, like, what's happening at work, what the clients you're dealing with. But I will say the challenge that I experienced back then is, like, sometimes it's hard to turn off work because it's
Well, work it really doesn't stop. Like, we go on vacation, the first thing I do is, grab a cup of coffee and open up the laptop, try to take care of as much work. What do we need to do right now? What can wait? That sort of thing. And when it's the two of us, like, there's really nobody to keep everything going back home. Right. So we try to time it out. When we're not so busy, but when it's the both of us doing everything and it's us going on vacation together, even on the weekend, like if we have some time off in the summer for like kind of hanging out in the pool in the backyard, we're still always on, we're still always talking about real estate or, what can we do for our clients? It's just, it's all consuming. It really is. So, that was a big, before I got into real estate, like Monday to Friday, 5 o'clock, you're done, man. I'm not thinking about work at all until I'm going in on Monday morning. And so it was a big adjustment, but, we really like it too, because it has its, the other side is, Monday morning, we're going for a hike with a dog and nobody's around, everybody's at work. So
true.
Working evenings and weekends does, it's not always awesome, but there's a flip side to that coin too, and the fact that we're both in it allows us to be together, during those times.
True. Yeah, no, I think that makes a big difference, right? Because if one of you was working a 9 to 5, then your schedules would be like completely opposite from each other.
Yeah. We're lucky.
If someone younger was asking you, should they get into the real estate business versus something else?
That's a tough one. It is. It really depends, I think, on personality.
Okay.
I really do. It's such a hard industry to break into now, even versus like when I first got licensed. I think it's so much more competitive now. I think if you're the right type of personality, you can flourish in that. Like, but it's hard. You really don't know until you get into it. I've talked to a lot of people over the years that have got licensed. People are much smarter than me, much more educated than I am, that just can't seem to make it work. And then you've got some people that just naturally fit and everything goes nice and smooth, So it really is hard. That's a tough one. It would really depend on the person, what they're looking for out of life. If they're okay to have their phone on all the time, you're tethered to that phone all the time. You're always on, and you need to be on call all the time as well. So it's a challenging career for sure, but it could definitely be very rewarding for the right personality, I think.
I think honestly, like, the one thing that, just from being involved in real estate for like the time that I have, there's a joke that I've seen in like these memes. It's like, everyone asks me, how is the market? No one asks, how is the realtor?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think sometimes, like, there is a mental toll being involved in work where, like, the highs are really high and the lows are really low. So the deal came together, yay, and like, no, our offer was lost in multiple offers, or that listing is never selling, or like that. that roller coaster can be quite rough.
It definitely can, especially if you get a couple, you know, losses in a row. It really weighs heavily on you, you know. And then even when things are going good and you're getting, you know, all the wins, sometimes you get fatigued from that as well because it just kind of never stops. So, but the highs and the lows are just, the highs are so high and the lows are so low, you know, and it's tough to manage those lows sometimes.
And you're helping people in the most stressful emotional time of their lives.
Yeah.
Right. That 1 week of the conditional period, or it's like just getting ready to list, or when we're negotiating a transaction, like those are the times your clients are at their peak emotional state.
Yeah.
But for you, it's just another week.
It's just another day. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it is, sometimes you forget, you know, like you mentioned the conditional period. So you have a seller in a conditional period and they're just on pins and needles and they're, any update? And you just, don't worry guys, it's going to come. We'll get it Friday before 5. Like, I'm not worried about it, but you can't be so lackadaisical, because even though this is just another day at the office for you, this is just business as usual for them. It's the most important thing for them. It's the biggest thing that they've got going. It's the biggest investment of 9 out of 10 of your clients, you know? So it's this huge monumental thing. And, you know, you try not to forget that you can try not to make it so blasé, you know, that you got to understand that it is really a big deal.
100%. Like I've noticed that, like, at least in our line of work, we give both the client and the realtor updates at the end of every business day during a conditional period. Sometimes the update is, there's no update, guys. We're just waiting. Everything's been sent in. We're waiting for the lender to get back to us.
Yeah.
But sometimes even just like that text message to say like, hey, like, you don't have to worry because like, here is where we're at.
Yeah.
Right. Like sometimes that
the non-update update.
Exactly. Exactly.
Just to reach out and let them know.
Because sometimes it's hard, right? Because you're like, again, like you mentioned, you have all this expectation. You just saw a home you really liked. You got it under contract, and now there's this time period where you're like just sitting on pins and needles, right? Waiting to find out.
Yeah. It's exciting though. It really is exciting. And it's great to come through for your clients, you know. That's a really good feeling too. Like, you know, like you mentioned, if you're in multiples and, you know, calling them, telling them we got it.
Yes.
It's just like, that's the best part of the job, you know. That's the best.
Awesome. Anything else you want to share? Anything about your journey? Anything interesting? Anything like, I guess in terms of your career, 15 years, if we look back, that would have been what, 2011.
I got licensed the beginning of 2011. Yeah.
Gotcha. So you'd have seen some interesting times, right? Like 2017 was probably when Niagara really started to heat up.
We started to see it really start to heat up 2016-ish. You know, we noticed something like that. And, you know, like bidding wars was something that was like unheard of in Niagara. And it became common, you know, so that was really challenging, I think, for a lot of our peers to sort of switch formats like that, to like kind of find themselves in this whole new market. But I think it really was favorable to us, because at that time, you know, we're about like 5 years in. I'm like together, Julie and I, about 5 years in, and we were sort of already like in go mode, just doing everything we could to grow the business, to meet new clients, you know, to get more representation out there. So when that happened, we you know, we embraced it. We were already in go mode. And I think a lot of our peers that were sort of a old school, maybe not old school, but like, you know, they've been selling real estate since 1985. They've never seen anything like that. It was a big adjustment for them. Whereas we were sort of like already like, you know, on it, trying to go. So it really worked favorable to us. We enjoy it. I like a hot market, you know, I like the challenge. There's so much more challenges. It can be really exciting, but like we talked about, like it could be really, really tough too.
Yeah. Because I remember in 2017, like the spring of 2017 was like very active.
Yeah.
But then there was, I think it was like the foreign buyers tax, or there was some new rule that came in. It just cooled the market off.
Yeah, there was a couple of things that the government implemented around that time to sort of like artificially cool what was starting to be like a runaway market. The foreign buyers tax was one. Oh, there was the stress tests, I believe, came in around the same time. So those were like two things I think that they tried to sort of, artificially slow that market down. 2018, I think, was much slower.
Yeah, it was slow, but I think through the end of 2017, I remember it being slower. I picked up some rentals during that time period. Yeah. So it kind of worked out.
I think that might have been, I don't know if you remember, I think we did a deal together back then when were you Rockstar around that time?
That's right.
I think that was my first interaction with you. I can't remember exactly what it was. We either did a deal or got close to doing a deal, but
maybe. I remember doing one with you on the lease side. This was, but this was a little bit later.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
I think maybe that's what I'm thinking of then.
Yeah, that may have been during the COVID period, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, that may have been during COVID.
Did I sell yours or did you sell mine?
I think I brought the buyer. You were representing the seller.
Okay, cool.
Yes. And I ended up moving not too far from that property, actually. So
there you go. Nice.
Yeah, so that was an interesting time because we bought, I remember the one property we bought, like my family. So we bought these two rentals. Market went up. Obviously, we refinanced them. We had enough equity to put a down payment on a fourplex.
Nice.
So we bought this fourplex in St. Catharines. This was 2018. And I just remember we were negotiating on this deal and I'm like, we're paying you, I think we paid like $540 for it, but the fellow buying it or selling it had bought it for $485 like 6 months prior. And we're like, the market has been slow for the past 6 months.
Yeah.
Why are we paying you like 10, 15% more? But we're like, it's still a good deal
even at that,
40. So like,
sometimes you have to let that stuff go. Sometimes, you don't want to focus on that, but if the numbers make sense and if it still works for you, it's a good deal no matter what. So if he paid more for it, you would have been happy to do it. He paid a little bit less, but there are situations where everybody can win. I don't think there is necessarily a winner and a loser in every negotiation. It's more of like a cooperation. So sometimes
I think that's a big one. Just being willing to let the other guy win.
Yeah.
If you're getting
also winning. Yeah, right? Exactly.
Some people struggle with that because they're like, they feel like if the other person's winning, I must be losing.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. And that's really not the case. And that's what I noticed when I first got licensed. A lot of people would negotiate that way. But we've always approached it as like a cooperation. We all have the same goals, right? You do obviously want to do what's best for your client, but the best avenue to get there is to cooperate with the other side.
I think there's even in negotiation, I don't know who taught me this or how I stumbled upon it, but I realized there's like a respectful way to do a negotiation.
100%.
Right? It's like, if your client is not happy with the price, be upfront about it. It's like, hey, look, we're going to come in low. And usually it's like, I'll give the listing agent a heads up. Hey, look, we're offering way lower than what you're listing. Just a heads up. This is what my client instructed. This is where we're starting at. And then like have that negotiation up front. Right. Versus I see oftentimes it's like we put a higher offer to get it under contract and then try to like nickel and dime at the inspection. And, if there are things that come up, sure, adjust for the things that come up, but don't like use the inspection as a point to like renegotiate the price.
I've said that from the get-go. We always negotiate as best we can based on the property and the condition that it is as we can see it. We do all of our negotiating up front. The inspection is really not an opportunity to open a second round of negotiation unless something comes up. Hey, there
where
are
it's reasonable.
Exactly. And there are times like that where, we've represented a buyer, we find a problem with a property, especially like in an investment property. And this could be an opportunity for us to really sort of get even a better value. We could say, we're going to take on the repairs ourselves. We have to renegotiate on the price, close on the deal and get it done for significantly less than what we amended the price for, So a lot of times, even when stuff does come up during an inspection, it is an opportunity, to do better, but that's not what the purpose of it is, right? You just want to make sure that everything is as it appears, when you purchase it.
like that strategy actually helped me because I found that once I did a couple of deals with a listing agent, when I brought the offer on the next deal, they were more likely to work with me because they're like, okay, he's going to negotiate up front. I know where he stands for the most part. Now, sometimes I tell them, look, this is out of my hands because the client is insisting. And then like I can't tell the client not to do this, but I strongly encourage them not to do this because it's like, look, there's a way to do this where you can get a good deal and both sides are left feeling like, like they haven't been screwed.
100%.
Right? Like we told you upfront what we wanted, you decided to accept it, and then like we agreed on something mutually beneficial.
And that's what's nice about doing business in Niagara, I think, versus like a GTA realtor is that you're probably never going to work with that agent again.
That is true.
In Niagara, you're cooperating with the same agents over and over and over again. And, I'll get an offer come through in an email and, it's oh, thank God it's this agent, great. I can't wait to work with them.
Yeah.
Right. So you kind of get a reputation out there. And because you're dealing with the same people over and over, I think it's important to have good relationships with the other agents. It really is, because it's going to benefit your future clients as well. Because there's going to be an opportunity where you need a little bit of help from the other side. And you can say, hey, do you remember last year when I helped you? I think I'm calling in that favor, so to speak. You get opportunities like that. So.
Yeah, like sometimes it's just, like having enough rapport to have a real conversation. Like sometimes like we've had to say, look, man, like my client can't afford to pay more than a certain price. So it's like they think your home is worth it.
Pockets
but
pulled inside out.
Like this is it. So we're not
a tactic.
We're not trying to negotiate. We're just trying to get the deal done. Right.
And that's the other good thing about having like a good, good relationship with everybody, is that if you're telling me this is it, I'm going to believe you. You know what I mean? You've got a reputation.
Exactly.
You're telling the truth, and I can bring it to my seller and say, I believe it. We can walk or we can accept, if there's nothing left there. So it's up to us what we want to do. Yeah. Being a good communicator, I think, is key in this business to represent your clients properly and, communicate with other agents. I think communication is a real big one for our business.
So I 100% agree with you. I've noticed this, that is this a fair statement? Like in general, are most of the better realtors good communicators?
I think so. That's what I noticed in the beginning. When we didn't know which direction we were going to go, we just knew we wanted to, sell a lot of houses. We would just try to emulate the realtors that we thought were best around town. And they were always the best communicators. Some of them were like just super courteous all the time. Some of them were like super blunt and direct, maybe
so
not even
style of communication, but they're still communicating.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Because I will say that is the one difference between the realtor world and the mortgage world, where I've seen very good mortgage brokers, at least good in terms of them building a business that has a decent, size.
Yeah.
But where the communication just is really off, right? Yeah. And it may be also structural in the sense that you're meeting your clients, you're building a connection that's like far deeper than on the mortgage side. We try to connect with our clients, but there's only so much you can do virtually for the most part, right? So I think that may be part of it, but that is the one thing that has frustrated me a lot, which is like the no update. Like I personally feel that's like one of the best updates to give, because it's like you're telling the other person that, hey,
I'm still on it.
Still on it. Don't worry about it, right? Because just the silence sometimes, just some people can handle it, but some people their anxiety goes off. They're like, I haven't heard. Is something going wrong?
Yes. Some clients will say, just don't bother me until you have it. Or some are like, they want to know that you're. What's going on? We're still working on it. There's not a
I can't even remember when someone's told me, don't worry about it, let me know. I'm sure there are, like, those are, I would say maybe like if they're really established, maybe business owners, they're like, I'm busy, just don't bother me.
Yeah.
But like for the most part, especially like first-time buyers, all of them are like,
never first-time buyers, never. No. Those are updates 2-3 times a day. Yeah. But that's because it's exciting. And like you mentioned, like you've been that first-time buyer, you understand it, you've been there. So you're happy to reach out to give them the non-update update. I think the communication thing, getting back to the the mortgage broker thing, and it's less personal and it's more, transactional. I think the communication thing would be even more important in that role, because it is just sort of like, communicating through like emails, or like you lose a lot that you wouldn't get like face to face. So I think having those communication skills in that, and it's like, you don't want to find out, on the last day of a conditional period that you forgot to add something to the underwriter is asking for something else. Like, I think it's even more important to be a good communicator in situations where you're not having it like developing a personal relationship as well as a professional one at the same time. It's more transactional.
I think the one thing I've had to scale back on since switching over to the mortgage side is I've realized that sometimes all the details will overwhelm the client.
Yeah.
Right. Because if I give them the exact, like, so in my mind, when I'm working through a file, it's like, here's the scenario, here's the lender, here's the 20 things that the lender could ask for, but until they ask for it, it's not an issue. But like in my mind, I'm like, okay, if they ask for that, do we have a good answer? Like, have we asked for all the documents? Have we sort of ran through those scenarios? And sometimes, like, when a client will ask me, like, why do I need a conditional period? Then I need to give them some, like, okay, look, we have you pre-approved. So for the most part, I think we're good.
Yeah.
At the same time, the lender has the option to ask X number of questions. Now, until they do that, I'm assuming we have good answers for that.
Yeah.
But like, things come up. I just had a file the other day where we pulled the credit. We have the liabilities. We're paying off all the liabilities. Like, we're making the numbers work. It goes to the lender. The lender pulls the TransUnion. Now,
what's that?
So there are two credit reporting agencies, right? Equifax and TransUnion.
Okay.
So Equifax is the primary one. Most lenders use it. Most brokers use it. But TransUnion is another one that exists. And some debt reporting companies will only put it on one and not the other.
Oh,
right. It's unusual, but it happens,
okay.
right? So the client has a car loan, and it's a $20,000 car loan with a $500 monthly payment that didn't come up in any of our conversations. And even in our pre-approval, where we said, like, everything needs to be paid off except for one or two things that are clearly outlined. It doesn't come up at all in the conversation, but it comes up when the lender pulls it.
Oh boy.
Now, these are the things that can come up where it's like, you can try to prepare, but until it's in front of a lender, you don't fully know. And then once it comes up, then we make a plan. Okay, like, can we get a gift to pay it off? Can we like figure it out?
We manage this.
Yeah. But it's like, having that done during a conditional period is like, it's stressful, but the stress is different when it's like, you have no choice.
Yeah.
You need to beg, borrow, and like figure out who's going to come up with the money, right?
It is interesting that you said that, because, you want to sort of prepare your clients. You don't want to be caught off guard. You don't want to be like, hey, we never discussed this hypothetical. Why is this happening? You never want your clients to feel like, well, what's going on now? But you also don't want to talk about every hypothetical to scare them and to overwhelm them, because it can go every transaction, can go a million different ways,
Exactly.
and
you can only prepare so much. You can't cover every single possibility, right?
Yeah, I find myself sometimes like going into detail about hypotheticals that could come up, because if they do, I want them to know, hey, listen, don't worry, we're going to manage it. But I realize by the time I'm done talking, I'm like, you've talked about, now they're more worried than they were before. You kind of got to reel it in. So sometimes I can definitely see that on the mortgage financing side, because of everything that you just mentioned. I find myself doing that on the on the selling or purchasing side as well.
Yeah, it's a delicate balance, right? It's like, give enough information so that the client's informed, and especially when something is like a clear like challenge, then we'll explain to it. It's like, look, like, you had money come in from a foreign country, or like, there's like clear things that are like, we can get an exception for it, but it's not guaranteed we're gonna get. So like, when there's a clear thing like that, we can say. Sometimes it's like the subtle ones, right? I'm dealing with another file where it's like, the client, we're showing her bank statements, and it's like, she has her payroll coming in. She has a whole lot of cash deposits, right? And then it's like, it shouldn't be an issue, but then it's like, if we show this to the lender, it's going to potentially cause more questions. Right? And hopefully she has good answers for it. Like, this is the whole like message that I have from the mortgage side, it's like most things are things you can work through if you have a good answer.
Yeah.
There are sometimes questions where we don't have a good answer.
Yeah.
And then it's like, now you're in a tough spot, right? Because like the lender wants you to fit in a box. And if you don't fit in that box, you're going to have a hard time.
Yeah.
Right. And you need to figure out like, okay,
lenders are specific like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I'll say like the first calls that I have with clients, like the intro call where we get their information and kind of go through everything, the list of questions I go through is ever expanding.
Is it? Yeah.
It expands each time I get blindsided on a deal.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
that's
like,
a new question. Put that one in. Yeah.
Exactly. So like,
Yeah.
now I just added, do you have any car loans?
Yeah. Do you have any car loans?
I'm going to pull your credit, but I just want you to know, do you have any car loans, any liabilities I should be aware of? Right.
Yeah.
One that
That's
came up
interesting.
was like a client who went bankrupt like 15 plus years ago.
Okay.
That doesn't show up on the credit, right? And if I don't explicitly ask, they're not going to bring it up because it's so far ago. And it's not even him buying that house. He's co-signing for family.
Okay.
Right. So like, he didn't think it was worth mentioning.
Yeah.
He didn't think to ask.
And now are you obligated to inform the lender?
Well, so I didn't know, right? So I submitted to the lender. The lender and the insurer have a history of him because they had a mortgage with him that they lost money on. And they're like, if we lose money on anyone, we're never going to lend to that person again. It doesn't matter how many years has passed.
It's just
right? That's just how they operate many times, right? So now it's like, oh, okay. Like so now it's like, have you ever been bankrupt? And which institutions lost money when that happened?
Who's aware of it?
So like, if you tell me one bank, I'm going to the other.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. That's interesting. So do you find that you like, do you get more of the mortgage financing than real estate?
It's different. It's different, and there's some good aspects to it, and then there's some challenging aspects. The good, I will say, is what you described about just the scheduling, right? The mortgage world mainly revolves around banking hours, right? We work a little bit in the evenings and weekends, but for the most part, it's like, hey, we'll need to wait till Monday morning for the lender to give us a reply. So like, that's nice in a way. The challenging part is what you talked about, competition. So the realtor world is competitive, but you're competing with other individuals where for the most part, you can, like, if you work hard, you can build a business that offers something unique to your client where they will choose you for what you can offer. The mortgage world, it's competitive, not just to other mortgage brokers. So I'm a broker, so I'm independent. I work, I'm licensed with a mortgage brokerage, but we essentially work with multiple lenders, right? The challenge is that each of these lenders, especially the banks, also have their own sales force. So these are the mobile mortgage reps for a specific lender. And there's some banks that don't work with mortgage brokers. They only work with their own sales force. Each of these lenders at times will decide, okay, we really need to get some market share. We're going to just drop our rates below, like, so we may even lose money giving out these mortgages, but we just want to get some market share. So like, I've had situations where I've worked with a client for 2 years, pre-approving them, working them through getting approved, and then they go into a branch to get a deposit check, and they're like, yeah, I talked to our rep here, and they're offering a rate 0.5% less than what I'm offering. And I don't blame the client for accepting it, but it is rough that it's like, we've worked together for the last 2 years.
So much work,
and then ultimately it comes together for him, but it's not really any business for us, right? So that I will say is the more challenging part, where it's like, I can't change that dynamic, right? Even if I get paid 0, I can't like change the interest rate to go down 0.5%.
Right.
That's not within our control.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
When things work out, it's like, usually we'll have 1 or 2 lenders that we work with that is in that same boat. So it's like, we can point our clients to those lenders at those times. So that's the nice part when things work out.
Yeah.
But that goes in waves, right? And it is interesting because no one has the advantage forever, because even like a single bank offering a low rate can't do that indefinitely,
right?
Because they get so busy that their staff get like crushed under pressure, and they then eventually raise their rates because they're like, we will either lose too much money or our staff can't handle it. So so there's not like one lender that will be better than everyone else all the time.
It's always changing.
It's always changing, and that I think from the highs and the low lows, that is, I will say, one of the more challenging pieces. Where it's just tough. it's just tough to do all the work on a file and then like prior to closing lose it. Right?
Yeah, but you know what? I mean, it's inevitable. It's bound to happen. And I think, I mean, how you react to that is really going to like speak volumes to you and to your business, because if you handle it well and, you know, you still reach out to the person, you know, in 5 years, if they're going to sell or renew, you know, you're still going to retain them as a client. You know, we've seen it on our side where some agents, you know, in a similar situation would be upset. You know, we've very rarely, you know, we always seem to understand if something happens. Like if you lose a client that got a better rate, I was like, he got a better rate. You know, he kind of had to do what he had to do what was best for him. And if you take care of him and you still say, you know, I totally understand, he'll become a client again in the future. You know, I think it's really how you handle that sort of situation, but not everybody handles it, you know, the right way. And it is frustrating because you've done all the hard work and you're not going to get remunerated for it. But if you handle it properly, it'll come back around.
Yeah.
You know,
I guess it is similar to, I think, how on the realtor world right now, like, especially with listings, you can do all this work on a property that it doesn't necessarily sell.
Yeah.
Right. So I know that can be tough as well, and this is the challenge of being a business owner, being self-employed, where, especially in our industry where we are compensated based on the result, not based on the work, right?
Absolutely.
It's a bit different when you're like a gardener or you're a service provider where you're paid before you even start to do the work, right? Versus with us, we only get paid when something comes together, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Terrance, it's been a pleasure. We've covered a lot of topics here today. And for anyone interested in reaching out to you, we'll definitely make sure to leave your contact details in the show notes.
Awesome.
If someone wants to follow more of you, can they follow you on Instagram? Do you have a website?
Yeah, jump on our Instagram. We usually just post transactions and results on there. We're not very active online, but we're focused mostly like in IRL on our clients and growing our business. But yeah, if you want to keep tabs on what we're doing down here, we'll post listings and open houses and sales and that sort of thing. But if you need any help in Niagara at all, please just call, text, email, and we're happy to help.
Perfect. Actually, I missed one last question.
Sure.
If you have a few minutes here.
Yeah, of course.
And we ask this on every podcast episode.
Cool.
If there was one piece of advice you could give with the audience, and this is not real estate advice, it's more on the personal side of things, something that you've learned through your journey, maybe through some challenges, through some hardships you faced along the way, if there's like one life lesson, one motto, something that you would leave to the audience, what would that one thing be?
That's a really interesting and tough question. My father-in-law is a great man, and he has this, he's always said, life is good.
Okay.
You know, and he like, hey, Tony, how you doing? Every time I see him, life is good, you know, and he's absolutely right. And, you know, everybody's going to go through ups and downs, but he's always consistent with the life is good, you know? And so I think that trying to remember that life is good. We're very lucky where we are. We have all these opportunities, and you know, you get bogged down and stuff, and everybody has bad days and you get upset. But if you just try to remember, like, you know, life is good, you know? So I think that maybe that's the advice, just to try to remember that when you're having a bad day or it seems like nothing is going your way, it still is good. We live in Canada. We have a lot of great opportunities, you know, so no matter how bad it feels, life is good. Yeah. That's probably it.
Yeah. I think that really resonates, because sometimes when, like you mentioned, when in your line of work, if you have a few tough deals in a row, right? Like if you have a few setbacks back to back, you sometimes really start to question everything at that point, right? And
yes,
like to have the perspective, like sometimes you may not even fully believe it, but even just to have that mindset
you
of
just
like,
have to remember,
just there is. I'll tell you this, like there's been days I've driven home from my office, where I'm like, the thought that's in my head is, I am so grateful for the problems that I have, because some of the clients that I've talked to, especially these are more of the clients who are coming to me with a private mortgage. They're going to lose their home. And I'm trying to help them out of it. And I'm like, I can't, right? I've tried with all the lenders we work with. There's nothing I can do to help you. You need to sell your home to get out from under this. And then I'm driving home like, thank God for the problems that I have.
Yeah.
Because like,
Yeah.
I would hate to have those problems.
I know we say that to our clients sometimes too. If we're in the middle of a deal or it's not going well for buyer or seller clients, sometimes it feels like it's really heavy. And I'll say, guys, just remember, these are good problems to have. The problems that we're having right now means we're getting closer to our final objective. So even though they're problems, they're good problems. You're absolutely right. And it's hard to remember that when you're in the thick of it, but it's the same thing. Like, it's exactly what I mentioned earlier. It's the same thing. These are good problems to have. We're lucky to be in this situation, even if it doesn't feel great,
Absolutely, man. Hey, it's been great to have you on.
Yeah, this was a
and
lot of fun. Thank you.
we should do this again.
Yeah, sounds good.